Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2025 Worldwide Technologies DFS Tactics show. Per usual on a Wednesday night, we're going to take our final look at the forecast for Cabo and the Worldwide Technologies. We will take a look at the mixed condition model that I've made for this week, a look at my rankings, and at the end of the show, we will make some lineups to help you all finalize your entries into whatever DFS contests you play. So we have a lot to cover. Let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is the best golf analytic tool out there for your money. Go check out fantasynational.com. You will not regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where normally I put research out every Monday regarding some course information, patterns of previous winners, things of that nature. Haven't done anything much for the fall. Just being honest, the time has gotten away from me, and then most of these tournaments only have 1 or 2 years of prior data, so not a whole lot of consistency among winners. But normally, if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contests I play. That comes out every Wednesday after the DFS Tactics show, so that'll be out later this evening. If you want to see the players I'm wagering with my own money and the players I'm using most often in my lineups, give me a follow over at X. Lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle's in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe. Can't recommend it enough. By subscribing to his article, you're going to get his deluxe version, which comes out early on Wednesdays. Gives you his projected ownerships, his top values, top plays, and whatnot. Can't recommend it enough. And go show him some support. Follow him over on social media. Lastly, for this intro, we're live. Chat's open. Want to hear from you all. I have a poll question typed up, so I'd like to hear from the community in regards to what you think on the poll question. Who's your winner? Who are you targeting? Who are you staying away from? All of that. Would love to hear it. Put your thoughts and opinions into the chat. And if you're not able to catch a show live, put your thoughts and opinions into the comments. I'll always get to those as well. We have a lot to get into. Let's not waste any more time. Let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 2025 Worldwide Technologies. We're going to start, as we always do on a Wednesday evening, over at the Super Forecast for the tournament. Obviously, this week in Cabo. Good evening, Phil. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated. Hopefully you are ready for the Worldwide Technologies. You've got all your wagers in, which I know you've put in at least a couple. You've also got your lineups set. But if you don't have your lineup set, that's what we're here for, to try and finalize and optimize your lineups for the week. Good to see you this evening. Before I get too much further, let me go ahead and post the poll question here. Very, very simple. We've talked all week how easy El Cardinal is. 27 under inaugural winner Eric Van Rooyen, 24 under last year with Alston Eckroat. So simply, what is this week's winning score? I only have 4 options, so I try to put in at least a decent range there for the community. But would love to hear your all's thoughts, how easy you think this week is going to be. Is it 28 under or better? Do we have a new tournament record? 26 or 27, 24 or 25? Or are we going to have the toughest winning score, lowest winning score, highest winning score? However you want to phrase that or think about it. Do we have the hardest winning score so far? So we'd love to hear from you all on that. We look at the forecast for Cabo, and it has not changed since we looked at it Monday night. There is a little bit of wind in the forecast for early Thursday, but note that it is like 6 and 7 a.m. They're not teeing off local that early. Maybe by 8, maybe the first group or two hits a little bit of this wind. There's really not a whole lot here. And then the only thing is that the wind does change cardinality midday, but it does that both days, and there's not a whole lot of wind. So I did not factor in any wave advantage into my lineups and thought process. Last week, or 2 weeks ago, I should say, at the Bank of Utah, there was a pretty clear PM AM favor, and I made sure to highlight that for you all. I don't see anything this week. I would just play the guys that you are most confident are going to play El Cardinal the best. And then if we zoom out and take a look at the weekend, it is a whole lot of the same. Maybe a little bit of wind in the morning on Saturday, but really looks just like a fantastic week and weekend for golf. Very little, no precipitation, very little wind. Highs around 80. Just seems pristine for golf, and I think we're going to have pretty darn good scoring, if I had to guess. So with that, I'll exit out of the Wind Finder and bring us to Fantasy National. There have been 2 field changes. One happened, I believe it was yesterday. Siwoo Kim withdrew. So Siwoo Kim is not in the field. Make sure if you made lineups early and used Siwoo Kim that you go and change that. He did withdraw, like I said, I believe it was yesterday. And about 20 minutes ago, I checked Rob Bolton's Twitter feed. And I don't think this is going to affect, very much. But Aaron Wise also withdrew. 6,300 Aaron Wise. Now, the thing about this is my mixed condition model still has Aaron Wise in it, and it does not have his replacement in it, which is Hayden Springer. Hayden Springer is the alternate that is taking Aaron Wise's spot. Just be aware of that. I made this mixed condition model, late last night, and with Aaron Wise's withdrawal, like I said, I noticed it about 20 minutes ago. My mixed condition model isn't going to reflect that. So just in the interest of full transparency, we'll move to the non-DraftKings page view here, and we'll take a look at Hayden Springer in case you are so inclined. Well, I thought I was hitting Springer. Apparently I was hitting Joseph Bramlett. Hayden Springer. In case you are so inclined as to consider Hayden Springer, performed pretty well at the Bank of Utah. Most of that in putting. He has been putting pretty darn well. The off the tee is okay. The irons have been suspect, with the exception of at the Bank of Utah. I'm not going to be considering Hayden Springer or trying to find a way to put him in lineups. Having said that, he has played his best when it's easy. He has played his best when it's calm, which is seemingly the conditions that we have here this week. And he does generally play well on long courses. You see the Farmers earlier this year, his top 10, I believe his lone top 10 of the 2025 season was at the Farmers, a very long, very difficult course. This is fairly long and very easy. But he also top 15'd the Houston Open, Memorial Park, another very long, very difficult course. So my guess is that if we were to sort on long courses, he would probably rise a decent amount. This is looking at just 2025, so a very small sample size, but Hayden Springer is somewhat further down here, a little bit above field average with the 5 rounds that he has. Again, I'm not going to rush and change my lineups and try to figure out a way to put him in, but I wanted to be fully transparent with you as the viewer that Hayden Springer is now in the field, and my mixed condition model does not factor him at all because he joined the field, I bet 30 minutes ago or so. So with all that said, we'll take a look at a couple of things just very, very quickly. Fantasy National is on the struggle bus, seemingly not enjoying me jumping from page to page and filter to filter. The one thing that I think we'll take a look at, and it is in the mixed condition model. You know what? I'm just going to reload this because it seems like it's struggling pretty bad. Just reload this here. We'll take a look at easy. Easy relative to par. 7 of the 8 rounds here at the Worldwide Technologies at El Cardinal have been easy since it's moved to this course. So when rounds have been easy relative to par this calendar year, your top performers in the field: Lonto Griffin, Gordon Sargent, Emiliano Grillo, Ben Griffin, Kevin Roy, Camilo Villegas, Kevin Yu, Max Grazerman, Garrett Higo, and Takumi Kanaya. But like I said, I don't really want to spend too much with this because we talked all week about how I'm going to be using that easy to par filter a lot. I don't particularly think the long course filter applies all that much here at El Cardinal. So with that, let's go ahead and go into the mixed condition model, see how I am approaching and attacking the players in the field this week, players I'm focused on who I think will do well this week in Cabo. We're going to start with 5% off the tee. Talked about it all week. I don't want to fall into the trap, or at least what I think is the perceived trap, that off the tee is a dominating factor here. Yes, length will obviously help, and that's why I have 5% in driving distance as well. But you take a look at these players that have done well both years: the Austin Eckroats, the Eric Van Rooyens, the Carson Youngs, these guys who have been at the top of the leaderboard both years here at El Cardinal. They're not long. They are not long at all. So they're doing it more with their putter or their iron play. So I did not want to overweight off the tee. So only 5% there and 5% in distance, definitely favoring the bombers as opposed to your fairway finders and your plotters, just because these fairways are so massively wide that players can be pretty loose off the tee and still find the fairway. Average fairway width around here is 60 yards. So definitely favoring the bombers, but I don't want to overweight it. 20% in approach. Again, without any shot link data, this is kind of my default when I look at courses without shot link data. I just think that, as I mentioned, these players that have won here, particularly the players that have won, aren't overpowering the course. They aren't gaining a bunch of distance compared to their fellow competitors. So they're either putting the daylights out, or what I think is more appropriate, or in conjunction with putting the daylights out, is that they are hitting their irons really, really well and really close. So 20% in approach, 5% in putting on Paspalum. Do note that this is only factoring in putting at Vedanta. Vedanta is the only course that we get shot link data for that has Paspalum greens. The other courses, Puerto Rico Open, Cocoa Beach, don't get shot link data for. Corrales, don't get shot link data for. El Cardinal, don't get shot link data for. So this is essentially how well a player has putt at the Mexico Open, but those are Paspalum greens. So I do think there's enough consistency there. And in fact, if I cheat, take a look at the GCSAA. If we take a look at the Mexico Open, we see that, in fact, they have the same exact grass type all through the course at Vedanta that we have this week at El Cardinal, this Platinum Paspalum. So I do think it is enough, even though it's a different course, different greens, I do think there's enough symmetry there to warrant looking at putting on Paspalum. That's why I only have it at 5% because I don't want to overweight it. But 5% putting on Paspalum. We talked about distance. 10% in opportunities gained when rounds are easy. Look, I want to see the guys who are just going to flag hunt, especially when it's easy. So, players like Joel Damon, who are always going to be top 5 in terms of opportunities, they're going to rise in my mixed condition model. I want to see the guys who are just going to give themselves the most opportunities. With Eric Van Rooyen's 27 under, and yes, you will factor in a few eagles there, but you're looking at probably 30 to 35 birdie opportunities. Upwards of half of the holes played for these players are going to be considered an opportunity. So I want to see the players who are, in fact, giving themselves the most opportunities on these very easy courses. 10% opportunities gained when rounds are easy, but it's not enough to just give yourself the opportunity, and there is a little bit of putting hidden in this statistic. It's not enough to give yourself the opportunity. You have to convert. 15% birdies are better when rounds are easy relative to par. Guys that will go low even when others are going low. Who can go the lowest, essentially, especially in these birdie fests, these resort courses, these courses that don't really challenge professionals. 15% birdies are better gained. You said Tom Hoge, first round leader. You'd have to tell me his price because I know I'm nowhere near Tom Hoge this week. If he is, there he is. Yeah, he's early enough in the round, maybe. But again, like we saw in Wind Finder, it does appear like the wind is going to die down throughout the day, not pick up. So I don't know. I'm just not a big believer in Tom Hoge on these kind of courses. His irons are what separate him. Yeah, he is at his best when it's calm, but you see, he generally plays a little bit better when it's difficult, when iron play is really going to separate yourself, and when it's very, pretty difficult, very difficult. Like his irons were immaculate at the Bank of Utah, but he had been struggling since, or at least before then. So I don't know, Phil. I'm just not there with Tom Hoge on first round leader. Granted, I don't do much with first round leaders, so if that's your lean, if that's your gut feeling, okay. I'm just not there, and I would have no idea what the price is on that either. But coming back to the mixed condition model, 15% birdies are better. 20% approach, 15% birdies are better. This is the bulk, the crux of the mixed condition model. These guys who are going to hit it close and generally put the ball in the hole. Sounds easy, but that is what we're trying to get at here. 5% in each of the proximity buckets, 150 to 200, separated by the 25-yard interval. I talked all week how I thought, 150 to 175, 175 to 200, and 200 plus were going to be important. But I think the 200 plus is going to come in down here, which we'll talk about in a moment. And with the fact that most of our professionals are going to be hitting driver on these holes that are generally somewhere between 450 and 500. You see 483, you factor, let's just say, a 300-yard drive, which is actually not really all that long anymore on the PGA Tour. That's leaving you about a 183. 489, same thing. 474. There are a lot of these 175 to 200 approach shots on the on this course, assuming 300-yard drive. And for the bigger hitters, you're actually going to see some less than 175 yards. So I did kind of run out of percentage I would have liked to have put 5% in 200 plus, but knowing that most every player is going to be just taking driver and sending it, I felt most comfortable looking at these two ranges. So 5% each in the proximity buckets that I have listed out here. 10% in par threes. We looked at this pretty extensively Monday night and how par threes have been a very important factor around El Cardinal. That is where Eric Van Rooyen has really taken advantage of others comparatively. If we look at EVR, he is right there. And we take a look at, just very, very quickly, the Worldwide Technology, his par threes, 3.4. He wasn't the highest, but it was pretty darn close. You had a few players that performed a little bit better on par threes. One of them being Carson Young, who has been very good here as well. He's really taken advantage of par threes. But you see, most of these players performed pretty darn well on par threes, with the exception of Andrew Landry, who missed the cut. But your winner, your top 10, top 25, another top 5, a top 10, a top 5, several top 10s, all up near the top of the leaderboard, both overall and on performance on these par threes. So I really do feel pretty confident. And you see, for the majority of your top 14, just due to ties, all but one of your top 14 was at least positive in par threes. So I do think par threes are going to add quite a bit of value if a player is going to play them well throughout the week. So I wanted to see in the last 36 rounds, in the recency, who has been playing par threes really well. If you wanted to separate out a range, it would be the 200 to 225. But I just felt comfortable, or I didn't feel comfortable separating it out, because we do have a shorter par 3 at 154 that's never going to reach 200 yards. 189 very well could. Probably won't, but it could. And we have another par 3 right at 200 yards. So you can easily see that playing under the 200-yard boundary or interval, if you will. So I just wanted to look at all par 3s, but knowing that they've been very important here the first 2 years, I wanted to make sure I factored in par 3 performance. 10% in the 450 to 500 par 4s, performance on those. Again, we went through the course breakdown. 60 to 10 par 4s fall to that range. It's the highest strokes gained whole category, if you will. 5% in the par 5s, specifically 550 to 600. They haven't added as much as you might think for being a par 72, most likely because almost everybody is taking advantage of the par 5s. So, if you're getting a birdie, you're not really gaining all that much on the field. If you're parring the par 5s, you're losing quite a bit. So I didn't want to overweight that. And then finally, these greens are massive, 8,300 square feet on average around El Cardinal. 3-putt avoidance, your ability to lag putt. I wanted to see who the best lag putters and 3-putt avoiders were. 5% on 3-putt avoidance. There's the mixed condition model that I have made for the Worldwide Technologies this week. Obvious areas where I'll be weak. If around the green matters, I'll be extremely weak. I've said that all week. I'm not going to back away from that. I don't think around the green matters at all around here. If off the tee matters more than I think it does, or distance matters more than it does, sure. If I'm wrong on my assumption on these proximity buckets, maybe 200 plus is the range that I need to look at, or maybe I'm not factoring in the other par 4s enough, because there are 2 drivable par 4s, 351, I'll say semi-drivable. You see it yields an eagle at 1.5% 344 yields an eagle 0.5% of the time. There are drivable par fours here. There are a couple of shorter par fours, 438, 401. So, you know, if these other par fours matter, then I'll be weak to that. But this is where the majority of the strokes gained in par fours come. You know, so maybe maybe some shorter proximities might matter as well. But again, with no shot link data, this is kind of the strong inference that I've gathered throughout the week. Otherwise, I feel pretty darn confident with this mixed condition model. I went back and looked at last year's mixed condition model and how it performed. It was pretty solid. Now, granted, Austin Eckroat was outside my top 20 in terms of rankings, but he wasn't, you know, so super far down that it was a bad model. And I think it was only 3 of my top 20 missed the cut. So overall, it was a pretty good, pretty strong performing mixed condition model. So I tried to mimic some of that with some more educated inferences this year. All right, with that, let's move to Microsoft Excel, the reveal of my rankings for the Worldwide Technologies this week. For your information, if you are a new viewer, and as a reminder for returning viewers, my rankings are based on 3 criteria, 3 mathematical formulas or computations. The first is the FNGC rank, which is Fantasy National will spit out a rank based on the mixed condition model we just talked about, the metrics, percentages that we just went over. Fantasy National will spit out a rank. Course value is an attempt at giving a player a numerical value at how well they have played that course. Normally, I say the past 5 years. This has only been in rotation for 2 years. So this is only factoring in 2 years of data. That's why you'll see some pretty wide spreads in terms of performance. For example, Max Graysman's only played it once, but he top 5'd, whereas Kevin Roy missed the cut horrendously in his 1 try. Kevin Yu missed the cut horrendously in his 1 try. Somebody like Carson Young or Eric Van Rooyen, Justin Lauer, these guys that have played both years will have some very low course value, meaning they've played it very well. Lower the number, the better. So that's what course value is. And then projected ownerships. We are playing DFS. We're trying to find unique options off of our fellow contestants. These are projected ownerships from Gabe, who, you know, kind of took up the mantle and tried to do his own projected ownerships in 2025. And to be fair to Gabe, did pretty darn well. He's always going to miss 1 or 2 every week, but for the most part, he did pretty darn well. So I feel confident in using his projected ownerships in terms of my rankings and for the show. So based on those 3 criteria, my rankings for the Worldwide Technologies come out as such. Ben Griffin, top favorite in terms of the odds board, top price. Probably no surprise. He is my number 1 player, ranked 2nd per just the numbers. And he's so far and away above almost everybody else that his pretty ballooned projected ownership isn't hurting him all that much. Doug Gim, 7,500 Doug Gim, 2nd in my rankings. 7,000 Sami Valimaki is 3rd. Now, understand what this is saying. This is purely by the numbers. Sami Valimaki did withdraw before the tournament at the Bank of Utah. So we're not sure if he is dealing with an injury, because he's not played well in the fall at all. But just purely by the numbers, Sami Valimaki is 3rd. Rico Hoey and JJ Spawn round out my top 5. Michael Thorbjornsen, Max Grazerman, Lee Hodges, Nick Taylor, and Garrick Higo round out my top 10. Lee Hodges is certainly climbing because of this uniqueness, but also Fantasy National really liked him. Top 30 in irons, 4th in par 3s. Anytime par 3s mattered, Lee Hodges generally plays par 3s really well, so he'll rise. He's also been pretty good on these longer par fours. So I was a little surprised to see Lee Hodges crack the top 10. But after, seeing some of this 4th and 9th, and the irons have been okay, I can see why. I don't know if I'd really put him in my top 10. Otherwise, I don't really have an issue with much here. Again, highlighting the fact that this is only by the numbers. The computer is not going to know that Sami Valimaki is dealing with, or potentially dealing with, an injury. But you think about Sami Valimaki's best performance, his runner-up performance, it was at Vedanta. Very, very, very similar course to what we have this week. So makes a whole lot of sense why Valimaki is rising by the numbers. 8th in birdies or better, 9th in opportunities. So he gives himself a lot of opportunities. He converts them, especially when they're easy. He also plays par 3s, extremely well. 5th in putting. Again, very, very small sample size since this is just Vedanta, but has putt very well at Vedanta. Good with these links of proximities as well. So, like Sami Valimaki. I'll get into Seamus Power when we go through the price board. But, feel free to ask whatever players that you're curious about. But we'll get into specific players here very, very soon, as we'll sort on the price board, figure out where our fellow contestants seem to be going in various areas of the price board and how we can maneuver around them. You might have saw at the very bottom, you see the WD there on Aaron Wise. Again, I made this mixed condition model last night, and Aaron Wise withdrew now about seemingly an hour ago. So I'm not factoring him in, or I'm not factoring his alternate in, which is Hayden Springer. So if you want to see a tiny deep dive into Hayden Springer, I ask that you check out the beginning of the show afterwards. Okay, in the 5 digits, in the 10Ks, we have 3 players this week. We have Ben Griffin at 10.5, JJ Spawn at 10.4, and Rico Hoey at 10,000 even. As you can see, all 3 of these players rated out extremely well for me, so it's very hard for me to separate these 3 players. Me and Springer went to the same. Where did he go? Where is he from? Because I don't know if I know that. That's pretty interesting. Same class, same grade, or were you in the school when he was? 'Cause that'd be pretty interesting. TCU, excellent. Very neat. Very neat. Were you in the same class, or is he a lot younger, or maybe he's older? I don't know. But that's pretty sweet. My college alma mater has 2 famous alums, I suppose. I went to a very, very small D3 college. But anyway, as you can, you probably see it in the intro, but I have one of their shirts on. In the 10Ks, it's hard for me to separate out these 3. Despite the fact that Ben Griffin is seemingly overwhelmingly the top projected owned player, I'm still going to play Ben Griffin. I'll probably be right around this percentage, maybe a little bit more. But I'm not going all in on Ben Griffin. And if you've been a follower or viewer of my channel, you know how much I love Rico Hoey. So I'm ecstatic that Rico Hoey is seemingly the lowest owned in this, upper 9 region. He's right at 19%, Grazerman at 21.5%, Thorbjornsen 22%, Higo 21%. I'm going to play a whole lot of Rico Hoey. I know he didn't perform well here in his one try. I'm not too concerned about that. Top 3 in irons, top 2 in off the tee in this field. Yes, the putter is always a concern with Rico Hoey, but he actually gained strokes at the Bank of Utah. We look at his proximities for the 2 ranges that I think are going to play most often. It's very solid. Really takes advantage of these longer par fives. I like a lot about Rico Hoey. I really do. So I'm going to play mostly these two in the 10Ks. That's not to say that I'm fading JJ Spawn. I'm going to be under 25% on JJ Spawn, but I'm still playing JJ Spawn. Got about 50% Griffin. Should I lighten up? No, I wouldn't think so. I mean, I just really, really like Rico Hoey, so I'm more, I'm using more Rico Hoey than Ben Griffin. But having said that, I'm probably at about 40% Ben Griffin, would be my guess. Maybe a little bit more. I haven't fully finalized my lineups yet, but I've got, kind of the shells of them in DraftKings. So I'm just not fully committing all in on Ben Griffin because at this ownership and being the top priced player, he essentially has to finish top 3 for him to be worth it. Now, in my opinion, I think he's the best player in this field. So, in theory, you would say, yes, he should top 3. But I don't think 50% is too much. I really don't. Especially if you're playing multiple lineups, which it seems like you are. You feel like this is a good course for Grazeman to pop off. My only we'll get into Grazeman when we get into the 9s. I don't like this. But anyway, so yeah, in the 10Ks, again, don't get me wrong, I'm playing all 3 of these players. I am. I'm playing all 3 of them. I'm going to be most using Rico Hoey, and I'm thrilled that he seems to be the lowest owned among the upper 9s as well. So that really helps me solidify more of being all in on Rico Hoey. Having said that, I was probably about 80 to 90% Rico Hoey at the Bank of Utah. It's more like 65 to 70% Rico Hoey this week because I do like Ben Griffin a lot, which I'll probably be about 40% Ben Griffin. And then I do have some JJ Spawn. I will be light on JJ Spawn. I'm not going to be anywhere near 25%. I'm going to be more in the 10 to 12% per se. But I am going to play all 3 of these players. Spawn is just the least of the 3 in the 10Ks. Moving into the 9s. Grazeman, Thor, Higo, Thorbjorn Olesen, Kevin Yu, and Michael Brennan. Look, I didn't have anything on Michael Brennan coming into the Bank of Utah. I know some people kind of talked about him. You can see, like, even Fantasy National doesn't have the birdies are better or the opportunities gained from the Bank of Utah, even though it was easy. He's not putt on past Palom. It's just off your screen. He's not putt past Palom. All of this is just from one tournament. So if Michael Brennan plays well again, I'm not going to be there. I'm just not. I don't have enough statistics to go on him, especially when there are a couple of players up in the 9Ks that I like. And you mentioned one of them, Phil. If I am, more all in on Rico Hoey in the 10Ks, I am basically all in when you only look at the 9s on Garrick Higo. I've got 65 to 70% Rico Hoey. I've got probably 65 to 75% Garrick Higo. I really like Garrick Higo this week. 3 top 10s in the fall so far. He's also played the Worldwide Technologies once. He finished inside the top 8. I think it was actually a 6th that he played. The irons are good. I'm not terribly concerned with the opportunities only because his irons are, in fuego right now. Number 1 performer on par 3s, and I've talked a lot about how I think par 3s are going to be very important. Not concerned with the putter at all. Plenty of distance, plenty of off the tee prowess. The one concern with Higo is that these mid-length proximities aren't the strongest, but I'm just a believer in his form right now, so I am going to use a lot of Garrick Higo in the 9s. I will still use Thor Bjornsson, but I'm cooling off on Thorbjornsen. I'm going to be, whereas I was about 80 to 90% Thorbjornsen at the Bank of Utah, I'm backing that down to maybe like in the 40 to 50% on Thorbjornsen. He just hasn't had that big top finish yet. Fantasy National really likes him, per the metrics. Second in irons, top 5, both birdies are better and opportunities. Just kind of needs to put it together. He's also very, very popular. Similarly with Garrick Higgo, and I'm a little bit more confident in Higgo this week. So I'm going to use Thorbjornsen, but not as much as I have been previously. You talked about Grazerman. Yeah, he finished 4th here in his one try, whether that was last year or 2023, I don't remember. The irons are not elite for somebody in his price. Like, look at the other 5 players we've talked about so far. They are top 17 in irons. Grazerman is very much more middling in terms of irons, but he's a good putter, plenty of distance, obviously, good off the tee, 3-putt avoider, fine. He's not played the Mexico Open, so he doesn't have any data on Paspalum, at least putting data. I understand the logic behind thinking he might pop off, but I am so far and away confident in Garrick Higgo. I'm just planting my flag on Higgo. And if Grazerman plays well, that's fine. I mean, I'll have him a couple of times, but I'm just all about some Garrick Higgo this week. Thorbjorn Olesen getting some attention. No thanks. Good with the par 3s, but I'm quite concerned with this here on him. I want to like Kevin Yu for the number 1 birdies are better, when it's easy. 3rd off the tee, which is, right off your screen. But his irons have really struggled lately. So I'm going to be very cautious on Kevin Yu, playing him, just a small handful of times. I talked about Brennan, how I'll just be late on Brennan again if he happens to play well this week. So that's how I feel about the 9s. I'm really all about some Garrick Higgo. I will play a lot of Thorbjornsen, just not as much as I have recently. Moving into the 8s, going to be honest, the 8s really got squeezed for me because the players that I like in here are also the popular ones. Like, I just don't, I'm not a strong believer in Nick Taylor. Even though he rated 9th, I don't know. It just doesn't feel like a great Nick Taylor course. Having said that, he won TPC Scottsdale, which is, kind of similar in a lot of regards to El Cardinal, where you have, these pretty wide, generous fairways, and then you go into native area. TPC Scottsdale kind of, it enhances or promotes off the tee play a little bit more than I think El Cardinal will. So I don't know. This is just a gut feeling. Even though he rated so well, I just don't like Nick Taylor that much. And the players that I do like, Pearson Coody, Nico Echeverria, even Matt Kuchar to a little bit lesser of an extent, Grillo to a little bit lesser of an extent. Like, these players are pretty popular. So if I'm in the 8Ks, and I'm not in there often, but if I am in the 8Ks, I'm just planting my flag on Pearson Coody. I've talked about Pearson Coody all week. I've got an outright on Pearson Coody. I do think this will fit him well. But, Nico Echeverria has played very well here, but he's by far and away the most popular in the 8Ks. Kuchar's played well in both tries here. He's popular. So I just didn't like a whole lot in the 8s for various reasons, whether it's the ownerships, whether it's like the gut feeling on, the off the tee struggles or the opportunities. So in the 8Ks, I'm on Pearson Coody. Again, understand, I will throw in Nico Echeverria into a lineup. I'll throw Matt Kuchar into a lineup or two. But I'm really not in the 8s all that much, with the exception of Pearson Coody. And I'm about like you. I might be a little bit more than 30%, Phil, but I'm definitely not 50%. I can tell you that. The 8s just kind of got squeezed because I'm doing a whole lot of Rico, a whole lot of Higgo, some Thor, some Griffin. And then when you're talking about Keith Mitchell, I just, he was, but that was a little while ago. And like now, I don't know. He just, he always seems to disappoint. And especially like look at his iron form in the fall. He hadn't gained yet with the irons in the fall. Now, him gaining 6.1 is a complete aberration. That's one of his top 5 performances at the Bay Current in terms of putting. It is encouraging he's gained twice in a row. Show me some life with the irons, Keith. That's what I'll say. Show me some signs of life with the irons. He's also generally better when it's difficult. And this is not difficult. He missed the cut here last year. Was very middling the first year it was here. And if we look at like the Mexico Open, yeah, top 20. Not in 2025, but in 2024, top 20. But then again, like his irons were really carrying him when he was, very, very good in 2024 with the irons. He's not in that form right now with the irons. He's just not. So I'm not there with Keith Mitchell. I'm just not. All right, moving into the sevens. I'm going to try to speed through this because we still need to make some lineups. One last. I will dabble a little bit of Jesper Svensson at 8,000 as well. Believing in the big, big distance, first in distance, 7th off the tee, lots of opportunities. The irons aren't horrible, not great, they're not horrible. So other than Pearson Coody, which I'm doing, most of the time in the 8s, I'll sprinkle some Nico Echeverria, sprinkle a little bit of Kuchar. I will sprinkle some Jesper Svensson. I want to make sure I mention that since I didn't earlier. Moving into the upper sevens. In the upper sevens, there's one player that I'm really kind of keyed in on, and that's Austin Eckroat, defending champion. I'm not picking him to win, but he's played here twice, 23rd, and then a win. He is the most projected on player in the upper seven, so that's why I'm not doing it a whole lot. But top 10 in irons, plenty of opportunities, converts them. We saw that the poor putter on Paspalum didn't hold him back last year. It's okay. Again, if I'm in the upper sevens, like this whole area, if I'm not sprinkling Kuchar, if I'm not sprinkling Jesper Svensson, this whole area to me is just kind of dead. Not a whole lot that I like here. I know people have talked about John Kiefer, supposedly a very, very stalwart young talent. Again, I'm only going by the statistics that I have here, and he's been playing on I think it's the Korn Ferry Tour, maybe it's the Latino or Latin America's Tour. I'm just going by the statistics, so if I'm late on John Kiefer like I am, or like I was with Michael Brennan, I accept that. But I will say that some people have been talking about John Kiefer. But yeah, other than Austin Eckroat, this area is just kind of dead for me. I want to like Eckroat, but he's the most popular player in this region. I also don't hate Jaeger, but Jaeger has been pretty bad with the driver. Now you have to be absolutely horrendous with the driver to get yourself in trouble around El Cardinal, but Jaeger's been that bad recently, so I'll play him once or twice. Not really all that thrilled with it. Moving into the mid sevens, this is where I think a lot of value is to be found. Start with Victor Paris at 7,600, top 10 in irons. Very, very good on these par threes. His 175 or his proximities leave a little bit to be desired, but his 200 plus is very good, as you can see by his performance on par fives. I think it's a worthwhile gamble if you're wanting to get off some Austin Eckroat chalk. I'm not doing it very, very much. But I do want to mention Victor Perry. I love everything about Doug Gim this week. I'm on Team No Putt this week with Rico. Garrick Higgle's been putting better, but he used to be Team No Putt. Kevin Yu, I don't hate. Very much Team No Putt. Doug Gim, very much Team No Putt. I love everything about Doug Gim this week. Less than 10% owned at a course that he's been pretty darn good at, averaging a top 20 in the 2 appearances. Top 15 in irons still. Gives himself plenty of opportunities. He's actually been converting them when it's easy. Pretty darn good off the tee. He has enough distance. He putt Mexico Open poorly, but it wasn't an abject failure. So I'm going to play a lot of Doug Gim. I am going to be extremely overweight on Doug Gim, and if he does not play well, I will lose. I also want to point your attention to Matty Schmid. I know some of these numbers here might not look impressive. You know, pretty poor with the irons. Opportunities not great. Again, I want to focus on these proximities, and he's been elite at these proximities. 14th and 3rd, has plenty of distance to get to these proximities as well on these long par 4s. Yeah, I like Matty Schmid a little bit. I believe in the talent of Luke Clanton. He has not put it together yet, but I'm going to make sure I have him in a lineup. William Mal rated out pretty high for me. He's got pretty solid statistics through here. I was a little bit surprised with that. He actually put Vedanta pretty well as well. His one bad statistic you see there is his 150 to 175. That's the only pink or red statistic he has. So he rated out very strongly. Want to make sure I mention that to you all. I don't know if I'm as much of a believer in William Mal, but I definitely put him in, 2 or 3 lineups. Talked about Lee Hodges. I don't know if I would put him 8th, but I definitely sprinkled him some. Roy has been a little bit disappointing in the fall. I'm all about some Christopher Ventura. Absolutely. I'm going to be extremely overweight on Doug Gim. I'm going to be extremely overweight on Christopher Ventura. Ventura really played well at the Bank of Utah when he was 7,000 and very unique. And he was my mad scientist play that week, and he pulled through for me. I'm going to go right back to the well with Ventura. A little bit more pricey. Starting to get a little bit of attention, but, solid. Not excellent, not elite, but solid with the irons. Get a lot of opportunities. He's converting them enough. He has putt Vedanta pretty well. His one bugaboo, at least of the statistics we've gathered, has been these par 5s. Okay. He'll have to make sure he doesn't give away too much there, but, his mid-iron proximities have been really good. I like a lot of Christopher Ventura this week. I'll mention Rosner again simply because of the irons. Not a very good putter, but if you're a big believer in irons, take a look at Antoine Rosner. We talked about Sami Valimaki. The numbers aren't going to know that he potentially is dealing with an injury. I don't know if he is, but he did withdraw prior to the Bank of Utah. But this seems like a perfect fit for Sami Valimaki. So I'm going to take the chance that he is healthy. If you're not willing to take that chance, I don't blame you one bit. But I'm going to be like 60% Sami Valimaki, considering I see him at less than 8%. And if he's dealing with an injury, 60% of my lineups are just kind of dead. I'm willing to take that chance. But this sets up so perfectly for Sammy. I want to make sure I'm on him if he is indeed healthy. 2 other names in the low 7s that I want you to pay attention to, even though they didn't rate out well. Grayson Sigg, I talked about him quite a bit Monday night. I like Grayson Sigg. His irons are in fuego right now. He has played 3 tournaments in the fall. 2 of those 3 tournaments, he gained more than 8 shots on approach. His irons are absolutely in fuego. The putter leaves quite a bit to be desired. He doesn't have a whole lot of distance. again, much like Antoine Rosner, much like Victor Paris, Doug Gim, if you're a big believer in irons, much like Garrick Higo right now, whose irons are really, really good. Rico Hoey, his irons are really, really good right now. If you want a cheaper version, but a more volatile version of that, take a long look at Grayson Sigg. I'm telling you, his irons have been immaculate during the fall. The other name in the low sevens I want to mention, because he has played this course both years, he's finished 2nd and 9th. It's Carson Young. So be aware of Carson Young. There's just something simply about this golf course that he really, really gravitates toward. 2nd and 9th in his 2 years here. So I want to mention Carson Young as well. 2 names in the 6Ks before we start making some lineups. Again, Ben Coles, number 1 number 1 approach player in the field, even at 6,900. But just be aware, he's at 8% as a 6K in a fall event. He is very, very popular. I'm going to mention him because I'm going to play him because I believe in the irons, but he's not as unique as you think he is, being in the 6Ks. So truly, the 6K play that I want to gravitate your all's attention towards is Chan Kim. This guy plays extremely well when it's easy, and there's no denying that El Cardinal is easy. The irons haven't been great. He's a better iron player than this. But you see his performance at Vedanta. He's actually the top-rated putter in this field, along with Frankie Sapan and one other, in terms of putting at Vedanta. These greens aren't overly complicated. Chan Kim's not traditionally a very good putter. I like the setup here for Chan Kim, considering these greens aren't complicated. I do believe in the irons enough. If you're trying to get greedy, if you're, for example, Phil, if you've got a lot of Ben Griffin, and you like a lot of Garrick Higo, and you like a lot of Pearson Coody, if you're trying to find some price savings and get a whole lot of uniqueness as well, Chan Kim is absolutely worth a look at 6,600. But my mad scientist play, even though he's a little bit more popular than what I would like to generally call a mad scientist play, is Sami Valimaki, and I'm hoping that he's just healthy. So Sami Valimaki is my mad scientist play. Otherwise, it would be Chan Kim at 66. Okay, let's make some lineups very quickly. We're running short on time already. But feel free to jump into chat with any questions you have. I don't want to ignore any questions that are out there. But I try to keep the show at about an hour, and we're already at that. If we're going to make some lineups that are very popular, that we're going to try and beat, most projected on player is absolutely Ben Griffin. Mad Scientist play. You've been on Frankie Sapan for a couple weeks. He made the cut at the Bank of Utah. You know what? I'll tip my cap to you, Phil. If Frankie Sapan plays well, then you're gonna do pretty darn well. It was slightly encouraging to see him gain with the irons last week. He's a tremendous putter, so he's got something going for him. But you can see out of 120 players, he was pretty darn close to last. He hadn't been good in 2025 at all. This and the putting might actually be the only green statistics. He's acceptable on the par fives, bad with the proximities, distance no. Number 1 putter at Vedanta, really poor off the tee. Oh, par threes, he's actually not terrible. So, he's got a little bit going for him. I just can't get there. All right. Otherwise, let's try to finalize this lineup, or a couple lineups here very quickly. It looks like Eric Cole is getting a lot of attention in the low sevens, at least per Gabe. And then this would be something like Austin Eckroat, Stefan Jaeger at 11%. And then you've got a couple of mid-8s up here. This might be a little bit over in terms of price, but I'm trying to highlight the highest ownership I can. 8,200 is Kuchar. That would work. So this looks like it could be a popular lineup for the Ben Griffin. If our fellow contestants who are going Ben Griffin skip the 9s, this is what their lineup's going to look like. 90% total ownership. That's pretty ugly. Now this might not be as much total ownership, but this also seems like it is very possible. If our fellow contestants go something like Ben Griffin and then go into the 6s for Ben Coles, they'll come up to the 9s. We'll give them 4 for now, considering he's the most popular in the 9Ks. And then again, coming down into the 8s for Nico Echeverria, Austin Eckroat this is Eric Cole. And then 7,400. No one in 7,400 is getting a whole lot of love. Fishburne, 9%. Doug Gimmett, 9%. Hubbard at 8.5%. Let's try to stay under price or within the price range and go Fishburne. That's 93.5. Not great. If our fellow contestants are willing to go into the 6s with their Ben Griffin lineup, that's what it's looking like. One more chalky lineup before we try to maneuver around them. If our fellow contestants go more balanced, we'll say maybe it's Grazerman, and then we'll give them Higo. Do Nico again. We'll give him Grillo this time. Maybe? No, that's too much. Maybe they come off of Grazerman. Maybe they go Thor and Higo. Go Nico. Go Eckroat. Again, Eric Cole. And then 77. Yeah, Jaeger's 100 more. So if they go more balanced, that's the kind of lineup that you're looking at. You know, obviously find $100 somewhere off of somebody. But that's looking like a balanced shell. Again, you're hovering in this 90% total ownership. Not great. So how are we going to maneuver around that? Well, up top, I've been going Rico Hoey. Again, it doesn't seem like it's much on ownership savings, but he is quite clearly the most unique option up here, especially off of Ben Griffin and JJ Spawn. So I've been going a whole lot of Rico Hoey, and then I've been combining that with Garrick Higo. I know Higo is popular, but I'm a big believer in Garrick Higo this week. So, and I'm also confident that I can find some unique options elsewhere on the price board. And then from here, it kind of depends on if I'm willing to go into the 6Ks or not. Like if I am in the 6Ks, I can go to like a Chan Kim, really save some money and really try to stack up. Maybe go Pearson Cootie. Maybe I get ultra greedy and go like a Kevin Yu. Go Kevin Yu. Still gives me 7,500 for 2 players that I can find easily. I can go Doug Gim, save a little bit of money and put like Christopher Ventura or Sammy Valimaki. Maybe I go, I would have said Eckroat, but he's the most popular up there. Maybe it's like Victor Perry and somebody. I'm just saying, like you can do a lot of things here if you're willing to drop down into the Chan Kim. I've been generally going Pearson Cootie if I'm in the 8s, not there a whole lot. But a lot of times, I'll just choose to save some money in here. Even though I have 8,000 available, like, yeah, sure, this could be Jespers Vincent if I want to throw him into a lineup. But, Luke Clanton or William Mao. For me, it's been a whole lot of Christopher Ventura. Sammy Valimaki, I'm taking a chance. Like, I can easily come up to Sammy Valimaki. And, I'm still a little bit higher in terms of total ownership because I've got 2 gluttons at the top with Hoey and Higo. But it does appear that this lineup has the potential to be unique, considering I'm going with a Gim, Ventura, Valimaki. Even more unique if I go really price savings with Chan Kim. I can also get really, really greedy. Go Ben Griffin and Rico Hoey. Now, this kind of eliminates Garrick Higo from consideration, but I can do it, and I still don't have to go into the sixes at all. I talked about Carson Young, who's played so well here at El Cardinal. 7.5%. Sammy Valimaki, 7.5%. Grayson Sigg, who I'm really, really high on, just not putting him into that lineup yet. Again, this is Doug Gim. I could go up to Victor Paris, but Doug Gim is absolutely part of my core this week. I can go Matty Schmid. I can go wherever I really kind of want in here. A lot of times it's been Christopher Ventura. He's been quite core for me as well. Again, Austin Eckroat fits into this, but he's gonna really kind of jump this ownership a lot. So that's why I've been trying to go with like a Matty Schmid, a Luke Clanton, maybe a Lee Hodges. Let's go Luke Clanton. I'm still a believer in the talent, even if he hadn't put it there. Again, it doesn't seem as unique because you got two big gluttons of ownership, but you're looking at a fairly unique build here, I think, considering you got four guys at less than 10%. So my core for the week, I understand that these guys all don't fit in the lineup. I'm just showing you my core. If these guys do not play well, I will lose. Thor's on the bottom half of this. Higo, Cootie, and then I come all the way down to Gim, Ventura, and Sammy. That is my core. I'll highlight Thor. I'll highlight Pearson Cootie. These guys are on the bottom portion of my core, more like 40%. Cootie just simply because he's getting squeezed because of his 8,000 price tag. Whereas I'm doing a whole lot of Higo, a whole lot of Hoey, a lot of Doug Gim, a lot of Ventura, a lot of Valimaki, quite a bit of Griffin. That is my core for the week. So that's what I have for you all in terms of a DFS Tactics show. Thanks again to Phil for jumping in the chat. You've been here all week. You've been here all fall. Very, very much appreciated. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, subscribing. I always appreciate it. Love what I do. Taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. The Bank of Utah was pretty solid for yours truly. We're going to try to keep that momentum and build upon it for the end of 2025. So again, thanks again for all the support. Looks like not too many answers for the poll question. I'm generally in agreement. I'll probably say 26 or 27 under will be my selection for the poll question on what's this week's winning score. I do think it's going to be very, very easy down in Cabo. But really appreciate all the support. Can't thank you all enough for all the wagers you've made this week for the Worldwide Technologies, for all the DFS contests you play this week for the Worldwide Technologies, for this weekend and every weekend. May all your bets be profitable.